Welcome to Realtor Rendezvous, and I'm here with Renee Smith from Title Partners, and we're going to talk a little bit about title process and if, ands, or buts, and reasons why. Introduce Renee now, let her tell you a little bit about herself, and then we'll get talking about some title.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. And I'm Renee Smith. I'm with Title Partners. I've been in the real estate industry in some way, shape, or form all my life, pretty much from the time I got out of high school until now. So I have a good sense of knowledge. Important to have that background, I feel, to assist when you either have new agents that are looking as to transaction-wise, what's the reason behind having title insurance and explaining it to their buyers and sellers. Sitting at the closing table, typically you find that when a buyer or seller comes in to do their closing, or even refinancing, and they've already been, let's say, at a title company before to purchase or sell, a lot of them don't even know the background of title insurance, why. They just feel that you're the person that's sitting there having them sign documents and notarizing them, where you may have a closer that is absolutely doing that, but behind that is that title insurance policy that is going to protect them from anything that could have happened in the past. So as you have homeowners insurance or auto insurance for those risks that could prevent things from happening in the future or protect you from things that could happen in the future, this is going to be a policy that is transactional, and it's going to protect you from anything that happened previous to your purchase. So as a seller, you would be responsible here in Michigan for providing an owner's policy to your buyer. And if you are a buyer and taking out a mortgage, you would typically be responsible for providing a lender's policy to your lender. So there's those two policies that are typically involved in a transaction when you're purchasing and selling a home, if there is a mortgage involved.
So, quick question.
Yes, absolutely.
Basically, in a sense, it's insurance.
Yes.
I think probably that's more relatable.
Yes.
For insurance purposes. So I know we want to talk about the title process and why that's important, but so that they understand how that works with insurance, because we know auto insurance for accidents, homeowners insurance are also accidents, just different types. But title insurance, what kind of accidents would that necessarily?
So it's going to protect their interest in that property, meaning going to protect them from anybody coming to knock on their door after they've purchased the property to say they have an interest in the property and that they are owed something from that property that those folks have purchased. So whether it be a previous owner that maybe had went through a divorce situation and there was there's a divorce judgment that's picked up, and we have to adhere to any judgment that's showing up on public record to make sure that that's all cleared, because somebody may have been awarded a certain amount of money or funds if that property was sold to the new buyers. So those are things that need to be taken care of at closing, so that when that purchaser is signing those papers, they are getting clear title, and that's what is promised to them on their contract that they're signing, that they are going to be walking into this property with free, clear title, and someone can't come knocking at their door and stating something of that nature, or even to the effect of somebody did some work on the property and didn't get paid for it and was placing a lien on the property. Those policies protect them from things that happened in the past with those previous owners.
So I do have a question.
Yes.
That actually sparked something. So let's say you have a death in the family. And then you got long lost cousin Willie shows up and says, hey, I was promised a portion of the proceeds if this house ever sold, and now I hear Aunt Gertrude passed, his Uncle Bob passed away years ago, so I'm here to collect.
Right, and that's another reason that that owner's policy will protect the buyer's interest in that property. At that time of closing, if that person was on title and has passed, and there was nothing in place, there would be a call for probate or letters of authority to be provided to the title company for the person that has been awarded the responsibility of selling that property. And then any of those funds would go into an estate. So this way, it has gone through those processes, and that cousin no longer has a claim if they did not come forward during that probate time.
Gotcha. Okay. So because I get, unfortunately, I get that question quite a bit.
Oh, yes.
Which is why there is another segment we'll talk about the difference between a will and a trust, living will.
Oh, yes.
And
There's many
Bird.
things. Oh, yes. Labor deeds. There's many quitclaim deeds. There's many different variations of deeds or interests that are being put in properties, and we never suggest that anybody just prepare their own quitclaim deeds. They should always consult an attorney when preparing a deed to either place somebody on their title to their property or take somebody off, because there is liability that goes along with placing folks onto your title or taking them off a title. So
Exactly.
There's a various number of things, and that could be a whole nother segment in itself. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yes, the most important thing is making sure that you are protected as that purchaser or seller, so that this way you will not have somebody coming after that interest in the property, and you can feel comfortable in knowing that you're not going to have someone knock on your door. And if you did, that's when you are able to pull out that owner's policy. So that owner's policy you will receive either at the closing table or typically just thereafter in the mail, although the mail these days just take a little bit longer, but that's okay. Just have
6
a little
months.
Right, just have a little patience, or reach out to the title company that you closed with, and or your agent, obviously, if for some reason that owner's policy is needed, and you haven't received it right at that closing table. But that is something that you want to always keep in your closing packet. I know most people just go home with that packet because there's a lot of paperwork, and just file it away and don't look at it again for a long time, which is fine. But sometimes you might be asked to pull out an owner's policy to provide when you're going to do something in the future. So if you're going to refinance your home, or if you're deciding to sell in this market that's wonderful right now, you might be asked for that, just because there might be something that wasn't necessarily cleared up at closing that can clear it up with having a copy of that owner's policy. So just as long as you know you can keep that somewhere handy that you might have access to is always a good thing to do for sure.
So how this works in the process is that with the buyers and sellers, the only thing on their mind is the seller put the house on the market, wait to get an offer, the buyer clears their inspection and get their appraisal, and then we go to closing. And on the buyer side, they think, okay, you shop for a house, you find a house, put an offer, do the home inspection, do the appraisal, give my life to the lender with all the documents that they're asking.
Little DNA.
That's what they feel like.
Absolutely. Little DNA to go along with
And then
it.
we go to close. That piece that no one sees until closing, you show up and you got amount of papers to sign. Buyers and sellers don't realize that invisible work, I guess we'll call it, being done in between.
Yes.
Which is processing the title. And as Renee mentioned, the issue would be is that the seller has to make sure there isn't anyone who has a claim. So when they give title to the buyer, but also the mortgage company on the buy side wants to make sure that no one else has a claim because they're about to finance this property, so they have to cover that. They don't think about what goes into that and the time frame that it takes, because it's not that you can, go ahead and send the form over, we're ready to close, and the 3 days scheduled for closing. There's work that needs to be done before that. So we'll have Renee tell us a little bit about what is that work and the type of things that they do and that they're looking for to help get you from accepted offer to the closing table where you can sign that amount of paperwork.
Correct. And good point, because it's always a good idea to order pre-title on a listing that you have maybe coming up. We appreciate and have no problem always trying to get things taken care of ahead of time. It's good for us, it's good for you, it's good for your clients to make sure those things are out of the way beforehand, because like you said, for a long time, years ago, before I came over to the title side, I truly did not understand the complete background of how title insurance and a title commitment is put together. And it does take a little bit of a process, and they have to make sure that they are scrubbing through a lot of documents to ensure that they haven't missed anything. And that starts right with, like I said, if you're a listing agent and you're looking at listing a property, and you either, whether you have a concern or not, it doesn't take much information for us to at least start that pre-title, where it would go to our orders department. We put that in. They then start a file. From the orders department, we're going to go through exam, and in that exam process, they're going to pull some abstract documents, and that's those documents that are listed under public record. So any outstanding deeds, any deeds that have been placed on the property, they'll go back 40 years. It's a long time. Yes. They'll do a scrub of that. They do the scrub of the name variations of the people that are selling, to make sure that there's nothing out there that matches a federal tax lien or state tax lien, because that's going to follow folks along with that property. Even though it's not the property taxes, when you have a federal tax lien or state tax lien, that's something that goes with that person's social security number, but is typically going to be something that can be liened against the property and needs to be paid at closing.
And that's something that people don't think about, and
No.
I had that last year. A client contacted me and said, hey, I want to sell. However, I think my husband has a federal lien. What do you do?
You have to get a payoff.
Yeah, and my comment was, I don't know. You probably need to talk to an attorney and then a title person, because if there's a federal lien, I don't believe you can sell without paying at all.
Right. There are a lot of background work that's being done, and like I said, we have our exam team that is wonderful, and they're scrubbing through a lot of that information to make sure that every mortgage that was taken out has a discharge of mortgage to cancel that out, so there's no outstanding mortgages. One of the big things that we come across is outstanding home equity loans that were maybe paid off but never discharged. And you have a lot of those companies, unfortunately, that when we went through that wonderful time frame in 2009, a lot of those companies went under as well. So we have to really rely on our good backroom folks that help us and make sure that they have those contacts to try and work and get some type of discharge of lien for those mortgages. Most people don't realize that just because you paid off that home equity loan, it doesn't mean that it's been discharged. It's a lien that's placed on. When you take out a home equity loan, just like a mortgage, they place a lien on your property, and they don't just discharge it when you pay it off unless you ask them to close it out. So that exam department is making sure, like I said, all of those mortgages that are taken out have an equal discharge of mortgage until they get to the one that is, let's say, outstanding still, that needs to be paid off at closing. And then you have our pre-processing folks that go through and make sure taxes are paid. If there's anything that's outstanding, such as specials, which would be if there was weed cutting that needed to be done on a home, or any blight issues, fines, or anything of that nature.
Which includes HOA fees.
Yes, we do take into consideration. We have to take into consideration HOA fees and status letters that have to be received. Those sometimes take a little while too to get. They're not always the easiest or the quickest. You think that it's just a push of a button if somebody has a management company that's working, but sometimes it's not. So getting those things in advance and having all of that information in advance really is helpful, so that this way we can make sure all of that information is cleared up prior to getting an offer. As you could see, if you had somebody coming in to purchase a home and there was not pre-title done on a home, and sometimes there can be, because it's a quick situation, but they come in to purchase, and when title is pulled, lo and behold, we find out that there was an aunt or a parent that was listed on the property with the current owners, and that person passed away. And sometimes it's all in how it's titled. When they took title, the first time, or if they did a deed and put that person on, how they put them on, whether the tenancy that they put them on with, which is, we can get into a whole nother aspect of that, but that could determine whether those folks have to go through probate and probate that person off. I had a situation which might help explain this a little bit, or make anybody understand it a little bit more, because I know this is kind of foreign to anybody that doesn't do this on a daily basis. A client reached out to me, and they had a very close friend whose father was looking to refinance his home, and her father was having an issue, and she said, "Can you look into this and see what you can do to help, if anything?" Well, it ended up that the father had purchased a home many years ago. At that point in time, I want to say it was probably 30 years ago. He met a lady, and she had moved into the property. They were together, so he decided to put her on title. And they went on title as single individuals. He quitclaimed her onto title. A few years after that, they ended up getting married. And most folks don't do anything after that point with your title. He just knew that he had quitclaimed her on at that point, so I'm assuming I felt comfortable with that. What happened then was, like I said, they did get married. She ends up passing away, and he is trying to refinance the property, and comes to find out that that last deed that was of record was done in his name and her name as individuals. Now, both of them had heirs. They both had children. So that meant that he had to, before he could do anything, he had to probate her off of title on a home that he owned for 30 years. So you can see where that, can be a little tricky. So always a good idea to make sure that you know who's on title to your home. That if there's ever been a quitclaim deed done, you know how it's been done, and that's why it's so important to make sure that you have the right people preparing those items.
That makes sense. I had a couple of years ago a woman who, I believe she was in the home and got married, added the husband, and I'm assuming they must have added as individual, because I don't think the house ever was sold. But what happened was that when the husband passed away, he had children from a previous marriage, and now they have stake to claim in his
interest in the property. Yes,
exactly. And I thought, well, that's just terrible. How is that? But that makes full sense. Is that depends upon who added him to the home for them,
and how they wrote them in with tenancy. Yes. So if they
full sense now.
If they don't do, if you considered, if it's a husband and wife and it says it's husband and wife after that, then it's assumed that it's joint tenants with rights to survivorship. Otherwise, tenants in common is then that means that each person has an interest in that property, and if one person passes, that person's interest would go to their heirs.
And then you end up with probate.
Then you go to probate, which
the whole goal is to avoid probate.
Probate, if you can. I know a lot of people think it's scary. I mean, it really doesn't have to be. It just seems, it seems like it's so much, and oh my goodness, it's going to cost so much, and sometimes yes, it may. But it doesn't have to be as scary as it is. I mean, it's still set up so that you're doing it the right way, and making sure that, again, no one can come back to knock on that door and say, my aunt or uncle passed away, lived in this house, and I was given this property, and I should have some kind of interest. What are you going to pay me for it?
So there's nothing like death to bring out the vultures that you haven't seen for
in
25
a
years.
long time. Yes,
state claim in what they think they're owed. And some people are, they just opportunists. But that's the unfortunate part.
Correct.
So I don't know. I think that's a bit of information now. I'm not sure if we can necessarily handle everything
all at once, right? There's a lot to go.
There's a lot to go in title.
A lot in title, but we're behind the scenes usually, and you don't even really think that there is. And it's like I said, typically you think you can just press a button and you should have all of the information right at your fingertips to be able to pull up that commitment. But there is a lot that goes into it in the back end to make sure that your clients are protected when they are sitting at that closing table, and making sure that the deeds are prepared correctly from the seller to the buyer, so that those can be recorded properly. So you just want to make sure that you've got a partner that you're working with that can be there and answer those questions for you when needed, and for your clients, because it's going to be the biggest purchase that they make in their lives, or the biggest sale that they sell in their lives. So they want to ensure and know that they're comfortable with the questions that they're asking and they're getting the right answers to. So, and it's a minimal cost too for what you're getting in return. I mean, I know sometimes it seems to be substantial, but when you are a seller, as I said, you're going to pay for that owner's policy, and as the buyer, you're going to pay for that lender's policy. Typically, unless there's something negotiated differently, you would be covering that, and it's transactional, so it happens just one time at closing. You pay that policy premium. In Michigan, the premium is state mandated, so there's not too much difference there. Differences can vary from company to company for the other fees that are charged, but that state premium, that state mandated premium is the premium policy amount, and that's what they're paying at that closing table. So whether they're buying, selling, or refinancing, and the only situation that would be different is if they're purchasing cash. And if they're fortunate enough to purchase cash, then they don't need to have their own lender's policy, but they will be getting an owner's policy, typically again from the sellers, unless it's something that is provided to them.
Nowadays we do have quite a few purchases with cash. Which it's just what it is. It's more than what it used to be, but it's probably not a bad idea, because with multiple offers, you need every leg up you can get, and cash usually does speak a little bit louder. So, but just wanted to give you a window into what happens, the unseen work. It's kind of like when you go to McDonald's, you go through the drive-through, you place your order, you drive around the back on the other side, and you pick it up. You don't think about the people who are in there
working it
taking the orders, dropping the fries in, putting the burger in, checking the temperature, and then slapping it together in whatever order they're supposed to, and wrapping it up and putting it in the bag and getting it to you. All that's happening while you're driving around the building. And it's the same thing with the process of buying or selling a home. All you see is the agent come with the initial contract, and then you show up at closing to sign the papers, but it's all that interworkings that happens to make sure that everything is done to the best of our ability, but also that it's legal and
many working parts for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes. And you have to be cohesive in those working parts with everybody that's part of that transaction as well. You sometimes will have two title companies at a table, and then you have the lender as well. So if we are, for instance, on that buyer side, we have a lender that we're working with to ensure that we are getting those documents from them to be able to sit down at the closing table along with the real estate documents. So sometimes you'll hear when you're sitting down for a sale or a purchase, really, I will have your real estate docs for you to sign, and then your mortgage documents for you to sign for the buyer. And that's just what that means. The title company has their own documents that you'll sign. They'll also then be providing those mortgage documents that are given to us from the lender. But there's a lot of back work that's done in between, making sure that we have all the required information that the lender needs, and the lender vice versa, before they'll even release the package to us along with their clear to close. So
long story short, you get that key, and you can walk out with an assurance that no one's going to come and knock at your door, and if they do, then you have a title company, because you have title insurance that'll take care of that. And on the sell side, on the listener side, you know that you don't have to worry about someone coming up at the closing to say, hey, wait a minute, I have an interest, because they've already done that background work as well. So it covers everyone, and then everyone's happy when they walk away. The seller has a sale, and they have the check, the buyer has the keys, and they have a new home.
Correct.
So, thank you for your time. I'm
Absolutely.
pretty sure that there is just an insurmountable amount of information.
Yes, many.
That goes into it, because this part has to happen. It's not possible to do a purchase or a sale. In a sense, yes, if you're paying cash and you're doing your quitclaim deed, that could be a little messy, but other than that, this part has to happen.
Yes, otherwise you get the baggage that comes along with that quitclaim deed. So if you're I've had several people that have asked me that in the past too, or recently, can I just do a quitclaim deed and just deed the property over to so-and-so, and then they'll pay me, and then we don't have to pay all of these fees and all this? I said, well, relatively speaking, the cost that you're going to pay when you're selling or purchasing really is fairly minimal for the security that you're not going to have any issues arise later.
You
because
don't have
with
that insurance.
Yes, with that quitclaim deed comes all the baggage along with that property. So
no one likes insurance. No one likes having to have it.
Especially in Michigan.
Exactly. However, when you need it, you are so glad you have it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, coming from a person who worked for one of the largest insurance companies in the country for about 10 years, I know how people feel about insurance. So thanks again for visiting us with Realtor Rendezvous. We want to thank Renee for her time, and we'll follow up with some more discussions on other things that I think you should know when you're buying or selling.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you.
Good luck with your home sale, purchase, or refinance.
Absolutely.